Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. It is Steve Lookner here on Agenda Free TV 2. Hey, we're going to do something we haven't done yet, and I'd wanted to do for a little while. We're going to look at some of the election polls, both presidential and Senate, and get caught up on what's going on with the latest at the polls. Talk about, what states you should be looking at if you're what states are the ones really in contention, both in the presidential election and the Senate? And we're going to take some comments and questions on the air at Lookner on Twitter. The election itself is only 39 days away, but in a number of states, people have already started voting. Although I haven't gotten my ballot yet in Georgia, but supposedly they sent them out. Anyways, so going to talk about some polls, take some comments and questions from you guys, and thanks to our moderators for being with us. We got Danny James, Curly Q in the YouTube chat, Mark Helton, Ucha Kabbalah, Sarah, thank you. And we got our Periscope mods, Facebook mods, Twitch mods as well. Thank you all for being there. All right, so let's begin. Hey, Idaho Star's modding there in the Twitch chat. Thanks, Idaho Star. Let me put the Facebook chat up here too as well. All right, so let's dive in. Oh, thanks Susan Ayers and Joel Heller for the stars, by the way. Much appreciated. Oh, hold on a second. Hang on. Okay. Okay, so a really good site, if you want to, if you're following along with the election, you want to check on various states. There's a really good site, 2020 Presidential Election Interactive Map from 270 to win at 270towin.com. And a nice thing about this map is it lets you change the different states, whether you think they're likely Republican, leaning Republican, leaning Democrat, likely Republican, likely Democrat, and or toss-up. So for example, if we take Pennsylvania, we want to make that into a toss-up, we can just click on it. See? So you can change the color. Brown is toss-up. These are the colors here. Safe. The darker it gets, the more safe it is. Safe, likely, leans, tilt. I didn't know that they had a tilt color. That's kind of confusing because gray doesn't even look like blue. So brown is toss-up. So anyways, you can go to the different states and you can see what they're saying the state is leaning based on the latest polls, but you can also kind of change things around. Like you can say, Florida, you can say, let's make Florida a toss-up. But as you adjust things on this map, right, it'll change up here. See, it'll change how many electoral votes each side has, right? So it actually, it lets you manipulate the map and then, figure out different scenarios for however you want. Whatever scenario you want to put in there, you can put in and it'll tell you the electoral votes. So that, I think, is a cool map. We'll be referring back to that. And then also, I think the best site I know of for polls is Real Clear Politics Polls. Real Clear Politics Polls. So they actually, they come out with polls every day. They have state polls, they have Senate polls, presidential polls, other polls. So we're going to refer back to that. And we'll take a look at some different polls in different states. And then when you're looking at polls, it can be kind of confusing. So one thing you want to do when you look at polls is, try to figure out something about the pollster. Like there's some pollsters whose results will be lean more right. There's some pollsters whose results will lean more left. There's also the question of when you look at a particular poll that comes out, say now, it's really helpful to know, what was the same poll saying a month ago, if they do them every month, for example? That can be helpful too. So there's all that kind of information too, which I think can be helpful in trying to figure out what's going on. So let's just kind of jump in and talk about some of the big states here. So I'm going to refresh this right now. So this right now, this is just their map based on the latest polling. But I think like when you talk about like, the states that are most up for grabs, they don't have anything toss up here. Like Wisconsin is certainly up. Let's talk about Wisconsin. And also when we talk about different states, we'll talk about what happened in 2016. So this is also helpful here. See, this is the 2016 results. So I like to look back on that. I thought this was the 2016 results. Yeah, this was 2016. So in 2016, you know what I might do? It's easier if you just do this. If you say 2016 Wisconsin results. So that was 2016. You can see Wisconsin was only 23,000 votes, and President Trump won it. So, there's clear map. One of our viewers said you can click on clear map here. Well, I'm not going to clear the map because it says reset map. The problem is, see, if you this says reset map. 2020 consensus, blank map. There's blank map. I don't want to do this because then I got to fill in everything. I guess we could do that, but anyways, I don't know what I'm going to do. We haven't done this kind of stream before, so I don't know what the best way to do it is. But let's see here. Yeah, you see, you actually can choose down here. You can to choose how you want to fill in the map here. But let's look at Wisconsin. So Wisconsin, this is certainly one of the most toss-up states, Wisconsin. President Trump won it by 23,000 votes in 2016. So what are the latest polls? Well, so what we can do is you can go to Real Clear Politics, and you can actually type in the state. I want to get all the Wisconsin results. Wisconsin. There we go. So this is kind of neat. What it does is it'll literally list all of the polls here. So how much polling has there been recently here? There's only, these two polls are the most recent. Now, and again, see, the thing about polling, remember, is, the pollsters, when they do a poll, you have to figure out, you don't just like poll a random sampling of people. You want to figure out, because how many Republicans are you going to poll? How many Democrats are you going to poll? How many independents are you going to poll? How many people who are Hispanic or African American who are you going to poll? So whenever you set up a poll, you're going to want your poll group, the number of people you're polling, to be represented, to be like proportional to, in terms of different demographics, to how many people will actually vote. Like if you do a poll, right? If you do a Wisconsin poll and you survey, 500 voters, if 3/4 of the people you survey are Democrats, well, that's not going to be a very good poll, because 3/4 of the actual voters aren't going to be Democrats. So different polling companies will try to figure out, what do we think the actual electorate in this state is going to look like? So, they're not all surveying the same. Some polls think that the electorate's going to be more Republican. Some polls think it's going to be more Democrat. Some polls think there's going to be more African Americans who vote. Some people think there's going to be less African Americans who vote. So you shouldn't see these as like, it's literally the same poll being done again and again and again. They have different methodologies for doing them. Then there's like phone polls and online polls, and I have no idea about all the permutations. But certainly something to keep in mind as you look for polls, as you look at the polls. And, if you really want to dive in super deep, I don't have this information, but there's people out there who they'll tell you, I think that this pollster is more reliable than this one, or this pollster kind of weights this differently than this one. I don't even have that information. So that's a whole other thing. So some caveats before getting into the polling data. Hey, thank you, Weston Jossie. Weston says, thanks for taking a risk on the new channel. My read of the landscape this year will be decided in Arizona and Florida. We'll know the night is over if Biden somehow flips Georgia, Texas, which are both in play. That's from Weston. Thank you, Weston, for your support. Much appreciated. Yeah, we'll be talking about those states. Okay, so let's just look at Wisconsin. So if you look at the latest Wisconsin polls, I mean the two latest ones, because these are both polls which go up to 9/20 and 9/21. Something also to look at when you look at polls is look at the dates, right? A poll might get released today, but if it's 2.5 weeks old, it's older. So one thing that I look at is I want to see which are the latest ones. So these are two of them, CNBC Change Research and University of Wisconsin, which have Biden +9 and Biden +4. So what you do see here is, these are all of the, these are all the, I'm also looking to see, is there any kind of trend line, as you go back. There's been a bunch of polling since August. But, there's this one poll, Trafalgar Group. Now, they usually have more pro-Republican results. They had a Trump +1. So, generally speaking in Wisconsin, it looks like the polling average has been around like 5 or 6 points for Biden. Doesn't mean he's going to win. But you can see he's had a fairly substantial lead. But remember, margin of error. MOE, 4.5, 4.5, 4.2. What is the definition, the statistical definition of margin of error? I want to show you that. That's important too. Margin of error, statistics, definition. A margin of error tells you how many percentage points your results will differ from the real population value. The margin of error is a statistic expressing the amount of random sampling error in the results of a survey. The larger the margin of error, the less confidence one should have on a poll. But see, the problem is this gets into all statistics and stuff. I'm trying to find how to interpret the margin of error in statistics, dummies. Let's see here. Okay, supposing the margin of error in a sample is plus or minus 3 percentage points. And suppose you have a poll that says, according to the dummy site, suppose you have a poll that says 51% of people are going to vote for X. And then the margin of error is 3%. You would be pretty confident that between 48 and 54% of the population will vote for this person. So roughly speaking, without getting into the statistics stuff and the math stuff, that according to I think what margin of error tells you is there's most of the time the results will fall into within this many points of the actual poll. So if the margin of error is 4.5, what that's going to mean is most of the time, I don't know if it's 90% or 95% or something, most of the time, the actual results will be between 4.5% of the poll results. If that makes sense. So if the margin of error is 4.5 and Biden is up +5, well, that means that most of the time, the actual result would fall between Biden plus 0.5 and Biden plus 9.5. So there's some uncertainty in, the point is you should think of it as giving you more of a range of possibilities and then like a high confidence in this specific result. So without getting too much in the statistics of this though, you do see that Biden has been ahead in every poll since, and this is interesting too, now that I look at this. Since of these major polls, right, since March, there's the only 2 times that Biden has not been leading in one of the polls in Wisconsin is a Trafalgar Group poll. And as Trafalgar Group polls lean to the right, they usually have more right results. That doesn't mean they won't be correct. It just means they usually have polls that are more favorable for Trump and less favorable for Biden. Maybe they, for example, sample more Republicans in their polls and think more Republicans will actually vote as a percentage of the electorate. So, but, again, this is a state that President Trump won in 2016. So, by 23,000 votes. Tinker Tots. Now, something else. Tinker Tots Pause says, I agree by now, especially in this election, I think everybody already knows who they're voting for. Something you see when you look at polls is, like for example, this was like 2 weeks ago, Reuters poll. If you add this up, it's only 91, 48, 43. This CNBC poll, if you add it up, it's only 93. So I don't know if people said, I would have to go to the poll and look. You can actually click on the link and probably go look at the poll. I'm not going to do this right now. Well, I'm not going to bother. But, these don't add up to 100. And sometimes there's undecided people. I don't know that any of these polls are putting in like third-party candidates or anything like that. But, some of these polls, there's actually a significant chunk of people besides those who are voting for either one or the other. And presumably most of those people will end up voting for one or the other because there won't be some huge third-party candidate. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Texas B. Henley fan says the rest are undecided at this, perhaps. History Underfoot thinks the vast majority of people have made up their minds. And something to think about when you're trying to figure out like how's this election going to go. You want to remember that in 2016, this was 2016, President Trump had 306 electoral votes and Hillary Clinton had 232. So like for example, if President Trump doesn't win Wisconsin, like he's going to lose, then it'll be 290. It would be, if he had lost Wisconsin, it would have been 296 to 242. So, to win this year, President Trump he can't lose too many of the states that he won in 2016. He has to hope to pick, and it would be nice for him if he could pick some more states up. All right, so that's just to give you a sense of what's going on in Wisconsin, though. Biden does have, it's not a gigantic lead. In some places, it's very close to the margin of error. But he has been pretty steadily leading in the polls. Again, we'll see what actually happens in the election. But, something else to keep in mind, too, is a bunch of states start voting early. I think there's an early voting calendar here. Somewhere. I was just looking at one. Early voting calendar, vote.org. There's a better one here. I had a calendar. Let's try this one more time. Vote by mail calendar. I should have the link saved. Is this it? Can't find it. There's this. I saw a state. I don't know why I can't find it. I saw this calendar which talked about when in-person voting starts. How about vote by mail? That's in-person voting. So a number of states have already started in-person voting. Michigan actually started yesterday. How about voting by mail? Let's see. This doesn't tell when the ballots are getting sent out. But my point is, in a number of states, you have early voting that has started or will start soon, and you have vote by mail that is starting or will start soon. And so, the polls, they're not just trying to give you a sense. If you know what's happening in a certain state, that's not going to just give you a sign of what's going to happen on election day. People will be voting in various states now and in coming days. All right, so maybe we'll do this. So this is the 2016. Well, again, you can mess around with this 270 to win. This is the 2016 actual results. These are the 2016 actual results, and you can see in 2016 President Trump had 306 electoral votes, Biden had 232. If you change Wisconsin to blue, if Biden ends up winning, then it becomes 242 to 296. So Wisconsin is definitely one of the closest states. And one you should keep your eye on. All right. If you have states, I also want to talk about the Senate stuff too. The Senate is really interesting. We'll talk about the Senate, but the Senate right now is, the breakdown in the Senate is 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. So, and a tie in the Senate, if it's 50-50, a tie is broken by the vice president. So whether the Senate changes hands, right? If Biden were to win the presidency, well, let me say this also. There's one race in Alabama. It looks like the Democrats are going to lose a Senate seat because Doug Jones is a Democrat, and he won in, I think it was a special election, maybe last year, 2 years ago, but he's expected to lose in Alabama. Where is the Alabama? Let's see if I can show you that. Hang on here. I don't even know if there's polling on that, but he's expected to lose. Here it is. I can't even find polling on the Alabama Senate race. But the point is, if the Democrat loses in Alabama, Doug Jones, then so remember, it's 53-47, right? So the Democrats, to take control of the Senate, either have to have 50-50 and Biden wins, or 51-49 if Biden doesn't win. So if Trump wins the presidency, but the Democrats gain 5 seats in the Senate, then the Democrats would control the Senate. If Biden wins the not 5 seats, 4 seats, 4 seats total. If Trump wins the presidency, but the Democrats end up with 51 senators, they control the Senate. If Biden wins the presidency and Trump and the Democrats end up with 50-50 split, they also control the Senate because the tie-breaking vote is the vice president. So whether or not President Trump or President Biden wins affects how many seats the Democrats would need to pick up to control the Senate. And not all of the Senate is elected it's about roughly a third of the seats every 2 years. And it just so happens that this year's, with the seats being elected this year, the seats up for election this year it's a bit more favorable picture for Democrats and Republicans because there's a number of Republican seats that are at risk. So we'll talk about that too, a number of seats that Republicans could lose. So that's a whole other hugely important thing, the Senate polling, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. All right, I want to take some comments though. All right, you can give me a shout at Lookner on Twitter. Christopher Orpilla says, if you look back at the Wisconsin polling for the presidential result in 2016, there was not a single poll in the few weeks before election day that predicted a Trump win. So I would need to look at this. I don't know if they have this. Do they have that here? Can I look at 2016 Wisconsin or not? I don't know if I can. Yes, this is 2016. So these are the 2016 Wisconsin polls, right? And you can see that Hillary Clinton was ahead in these polls. Now, something to keep in mind, though, is what pollsters do is they look back at the election results. After the election, they'll look back and they'll say, what states did we do well in? What states did we not do well in, and why? So what you will have pollsters do, for example, in Wisconsin, is they're not going to do the exact same type of polling they did in 2016. Because they'll look at this and they'll say, well, we had something wrong. Maybe they might say, I'm guessing something that might have been off is, remember, a huge part of getting your polling right is having the right breakdown of different types of voters who you poll. We don't know. We don't know what percentage of the electorate will be Democrat, what percentage will be Republican, what percentage will be white, what percentage will be black, what percentage will be Hispanic, how the age breakdown will work. So if you want to get the right, if you want to get an accurate poll, you need to try to figure out how many people from each demographic group, what percentage of each demographic group is going to make up the final electorate. And so what pollsters will do is in a state that they didn't do as well in, like for example Wisconsin, they will adjust their polling now in ways which they think now makes it a more accurate picture. Now, maybe it's not more accurate. Maybe they're making some mistaken assumptions. But just to be clear, it's not literally the exact same type of polling going on. Because the pollsters will look at this and they'll say, well, we need to update the way we're polling in Wisconsin to reflect better the electorate because we didn't do very well on it in 2016. So it's not as simple. It wouldn't be a great inference to say, well, the polls didn't do well in Wisconsin in 2016, therefore they won't do well in 2020, because the pollsters will be updating the way they do their polling in that state if they didn't do well in a state in 2016. Doesn't mean they're going to be accurate, but again, it's not. Pollsters are always trying to update the way they do the poll, the breakdown of who they're asking in the poll to try to reflect better what the actual voting populace is going to be. And then ultimately you just have to see what ends up happening. It could be extra difficult this year because you have this whole factor of vote by mail. So vote by mail, I mean, it's really unclear what effect vote by mail and the pandemic is going to have on the electorate. Many more people will vote by mail, right? So how will that affect who votes? Are some demographic groups more likely to vote by mail? The conventional wisdom I have heard is that more Democrats will vote by mail, more Republicans will vote in person. But as to what effect that has on the overall electorate, that's not clear. And remember, if you're a pollster, it's so important for you to ask the right percentage of different types of people in your sample. If you ask more Democrats, a higher percentage of Democrats in your sample, if your sample contains a higher percentage of Democrats than those who actually vote, than the total electorate, people who actually go to the polls, if 40% of the people you talk to are Democrats, but only 35% of the actual voters are Democrats, well, then your sample, your poll is going to lead Democratic in an inaccurate way. So that's a complicating factor, I'm sure, for pollsters, is they have to try to figure out, oh, well, now that we have this vote by mail thing going on, how's that going to affect, what types of people vote and what percentage of type of person X or type of person Y or type of person Z votes. So who knows how that's going to affect the polling accuracy. All right, so let's talk about another state. So we talked about Wisconsin. Yeah, and please, if you're posting in the chat rooms, I mean, we're talking about like the different polls and the election polling. If you just come in the chat room to like post bad things about the other party, just take it somewhere else. It's toxic. No one wants to hear it. I don't want to hear it. This is not the stream for you. Go to another stream and post something there about it. Cindy says, I block phone calls that are not in my contacts and don't leave a message. I get a lot of political text messages and I block them as spam and delete. And there's this whole other thing with polling, how you reach people. You want to make sure you're not missing people because certain types of people don't answer the call phone or don't participate in your poll. It's very complex. If you start thinking about how would I go about trying to sample a small amount of people that generally represents, in terms of breakdown, what the electorate's going to look like, it's really, really hard. There's so many complexities there. Okay, so one state we looked at was Wisconsin. Let's look at another state now. Let's look at Florida, because Florida is like obvious, it's going to be a huge state. Now, first of all, what happened with Florida in 2016? Let's go back here. So that was a state President Trump won in 2016 by 1.2%. So there's your baseline. When you're looking at polls from this year, you can compare it to what happened in 2016 where President Trump won by 1.2%. Okay, so let's go to Real Clear Politics and see what the latest is. Yeah, and you know, it's very close, as you can see. Let's go to all Florida polling, Trump versus Biden. I mean, this is pretty darn close. Tie. Well, the latest ones, the three latest ones are Trump +4, Biden +3, Biden +3. And the margin of error, this is 1.8, margin of error is 4.5. So this is pretty darn close. And then if you go back, you have further. This one from mid-September, Biden +2, Reuters, Ipsos tie, Florida Atlantic University tie. So, this is quite close. Now, there were some results earlier in the year where Biden had a bigger lead. There was one Biden +10 here, but this is back in July. There was a Biden +13, that was back in July. But as in terms of the last, few weeks, it's basically a tie. It could go either way. So Florida, once again, hugely important. Remember, President Trump won that. He won that state in 2016. So, we really, in Florida often is very close, I feel like recently, in recent elections. I'm trying to look here in terms of pattern, it's just been close recently. And Florida is a very important state, obviously, for electoral votes, 29 electoral votes. Hey, thank you, Chris Wright, for your support. Chris Wright says you have to be careful because some phone calls are probably hackers. That's why I delete, so I won't have to say buzz off, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I don't really know. Obviously, polls, they have to, when people are conducting polls, they know that some people are not going to pick up the phone. So there's got to be, I'm sure, they have to have this. There's got to be this whole science of being able to contact people, the people you want to contact, and get them to fill out your poll. If certain types of people don't answer the phone, for example, and those type of people usually lean one way or the other, then you're not going to have a very accurate poll if you're only going by who you can get to on the phone. So I don't know how they overcome that. You can imagine different ways of reaching people. So it's a very interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. But it is something they're aware of. It's not something they're ignoring. Thank you, Chris Wright. Amazing World says Republicans tend not to answer. Saw a news clip on that. Well, and again, though, presumably the pollsters, if there's information like that, incorporate that into their polling. This is the kind of stuff that they would be really interested in. So they're going to be constantly making corrections to try to make sure that their poll is going to represent fairly who actually is going to go vote. Quinn's mom says, how do they know before they call what demographic the person is? That's a good question. I don't know if it's like that they look at the voter rolls, if they do that. Let's see if I can find anything on that. How about this? How are people selected? Once numbers are, this is just one kind of poll, I guess. Random digit dialing, the process selecting respondents to blah, 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 blah. This is just Pew Research. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know how they do it in terms of figuring out who they're calling. Do they just ask you and say, who did you vote for? Or do they have some kind of list of your name and who you voted for? Let's see here. Telephone polls. This is from Harvard Business Review. Generally make use of a random digit dial system. If trying to reach a particular population like racial or occupational group, researchers can purchase lists of numbers, then randomly pick from that list. Pollsters have to include cell phones in the sample too. Seven or more attempts are now standard to try to get an answer from the same number. Despite these efforts to achieve a random sample, though, response rates remain shockingly low, especially among younger people, Spanish speakers, evangelicals, and African Americans. Yeah, so it's a very, I'm not going to get into all the details of this, but there's so many aspects to polling, to correct for various things. So I would be interesting to do more research on that. I don't know that I've ever gotten, in any kind of recent memory, a political poll call. C. Michelle Sparks says, we got polled yesterday for the first time ever. All right, so we are here, we're talking about where things are at in some of the key states. We haven't even really talked about the Senate yet. I do want to talk about that. But just it's good to go over these things, and then as we get closer to the election, we can keep an eye on some more of these states. Let's see here. All right, so we talked about so far we've talked about Wisconsin, and we talked about how recently Biden has had like a small lead in the past month in Wisconsin. That's a state that President Trump won by a very small amount. We also talked about, and again, this is not the, we'll clear this out. We talked about Wisconsin. We talked about Florida. That is a state President Trump won by like 1% in 2016. Those polls are super close from the last month. That really seems like a toss-up right now. Let's talk about another state you'll be hearing a lot about is Pennsylvania. Let's talk about Pennsylvania. That's a really important state. Now, we're not going to talk about states like, for example, Alabama is going to vote for President Trump. That's pretty certain. If he doesn't, right, if he doesn't win Alabama or like say Kentucky, then all is lost. So let's assume that we're not going to talk about states like Alabama, Kentucky, and also Massachusetts will vote, and California will vote for Biden. So we're not going to focus on this states. We're trying to focus on the states where there's actually a significant question as to which way they're going to go. So we'll talk about Pennsylvania next, 20 electoral votes. Now in 2016, what happened in Pennsylvania? Wasn't it President Trump won by a little bit? In 2016, President Trump won Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes. Now, what is the current polling there? Let's look at this now. We'll go to Real Clear Politics. If I could spell the name of the state right. Here we go. So let's look here and see. So one thing to notice here is, again, this doesn't mean who's going to win. But if you do look back over the last, this goes back to March, over the last few months, pretty much Biden leading in polls, although some of them very close in Pennsylvania. And in terms of the more recent polling, some have a bigger lead than others. +2, this is from Trafalgar Group is +2. Now remember, Trafalgar Group usually has polls that are more favorable to Republicans, maybe because they're sampling more Republicans. So that's common for them. And in terms of the others, you see +7, +4, those are the two most recent. And then there's been a bunch of recent polling. These are all the last few days. +7, +4, +4, +6. And this one +2. But these four, the four most recent ones are Biden +7, Biden +4, Biden +4, Biden +6. So, at that point, I'm guessing the conventional wisdom right now is that according to the polling, the state is leaning towards Biden. But it's very close. So the three states we've talked about right now, we've been talking about Pennsylvania, Florida, and Wisconsin. President Trump won all of those states in 2016, but they're all close. So, you might ask, well, what would happen if President Trump? Here's the 2016 actual. That's what actually happened in 2016. Real Clear Politics. 70 when President Trump had 306, Hillary Clinton at 232. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if it so happened that the three states we talked about, which were close in 2016, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Wisconsin, if those all went Democrat instead this time and everything else stayed the same, so you make that blue, you make that blue, and you make that blue, what happens? 291 Democrats, 247 Republicans. So if it were the case that just three states switched, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and they all switched from President Trump to Biden, that would give Biden enough electoral votes. I'm not saying that's going to happen. But, these states here, it's going to really come down to just a smaller number of states that are seen that could go either way. I don't think Alabama is going to switch. I don't think Massachusetts is going to switch. And then Florida, Florida itself, actually, if we take Wisconsin away, where is here? Can I switch Wisconsin? Yeah. Even if all we did, here's another thing. This is how it's just close. These are how important these states are. If I reset the map and we go back, 2016, that's 2016. President Trump with 306, Democrats with 232. Even if all that happened, if all you did is change Florida to Democrat and Pennsylvania Democrat, if you just did that, if everything was the same as 2016 except Pennsylvania and Florida happened to go for Biden instead of Trump, Biden would have enough electoral votes to win. So a couple states, a couple of these large on the fence states, it's enormous difference who wins in those states. So those are you want to focus on. When the election gets closer, you really want to focus on those swing states. Jeff Haas. Now, in terms of, I'm trying to think, is there any state, we should talk about this. We've been talking about a few states that Trump won, but they were close. And according to the polls, Biden at least has a decent shot at winning in either of those three states. Are there any states that you might say, are there any states that President Trump could pick up? We've been talking about some states that Trump could lose that he won in 2016. Are there any he could pick up? That's a good question. Jeff Haas says, we'll talk about that in a second. Jeff Haas says, Biden just needs Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those are seats that Clinton lost by 1%. So Jeff says, and again, you can go mess around with this map at 270 to win. So if you put it on 2016 actual, Jeff says Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So let's say everything happens the exact way it did in 2016, but Wisconsin, which was really close, goes for Biden, Michigan goes for Biden, and Pennsylvania goes for Biden. If we just change those three states, that's it, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, that gives Democrats 278. Not saying that'll happen. I'm just saying that's another way. So President Trump, if President Trump wants to win, he's going to need to win some of these battleground states we're talking about. Okay. Let's go back 2016. Now I'm trying to think. So this is the 2016 map. That's not the current map. That's 2016. Are there any states that President Trump could pick up that he didn't win before? I believe one state that Republicans were thinking they might be able to pick up was Minnesota. This is Minnesota, and it went for Hillary Clinton. But if you look at the actual, Minnesota, Hillary Clinton won Minnesota in 2016, but it was pretty close. It was 1.5%, right? So you might wonder, could President Trump maybe pick up Minnesota? It would be good for him if he could pick up some states that he didn't win in 2016. Well, let's look at the Minnesota polling. So that polling in Minnesota has been a bit more favorable for Biden than some of the other close states. So if you look at, here is some of the recent polling in Minnesota. This latest one, USA Today Suffolk, Biden +7. This seems like a bit of an outlier, who knows? ABC News, Washington Post, a couple weeks ago, Biden +16. CBS, YouGov Biden +9. New York Times, CNN, Biden +9. So then before that, Biden +9, Biden +8. So, I mean, these are all the September polls here. So, it doesn't mean it's impossible, but it looks like it's going to be tough for President Trump to win Minnesota, unless there's something systematically wrong with this polling. But right now, it looks like it's going to be difficult for him to pick up Minnesota the way things have been going with the polls. You might think, well, where can he pick up a seat? That was a very close seat in 2016. History Underfoot says Minnesota is the only state that never voted for Reagan. It's a blue state, but changing. No Name says Minnesota, Nevada only. So No Name thinks that the two states where President Trump might have a chance of picking up a state that he lost in 2016 are Nevada and Minnesota. So again, Minnesota results 2016, Hillary Clinton won by 1.5%. Close though. All right, so that's a look at what's going on with Minnesota. And then Nevada, one of our viewers mentioned Nevada. Let's look up Nevada results from 2016. Yeah, this was close too. Nevada, 2016, Hillary Clinton won, but only by 2.4%. So you might wonder, hey, President Trump was pretty close in 2016. Could he pick this up this year? So let's go look at the Nevada polling. There, I think with Nevada, there has not been much polling there, actually. There's been very little polling. That's another thing. Sometimes you have these states with very little polling. So, there have only been 2 polls here that they have on Real Clear Politics since January. That's January, so I'm not really concerned with what the poll said in January. There have been these 2 polls. Now, the New York Times Siena poll from early September is pretty close. It's a 5.3 margin of error, and it's a 4-point Biden lead. So it's within the margin of error. Some people might say that's a statistical tie. And then there's this one poll, a Fox News poll done a few days ago had Biden plus 11. But, it would be what you'd like to have from Nevada is some more polling. Maybe if you had some more polling, you'd be like, oh, this plus 11 seems like just an outlier. So, that it'll be interesting to see if there's some more polling coming out about Nevada because there's been so little polling there. But, that is another state that was close in 2016 that President Trump lost. So, if he's going to pick up a state, maybe that's a place he does it as well. Okay. Interesting, though. I don't know if there's any other state where President Trump might pick up, realistically, a state where he didn't win it in 2016. Let me know if you have any suggestions on that. Let's look at the 2016 map again, too. This is 2016 actual. How about New Hampshire? At a certain point, wasn't President Trump thinking about New Hampshire? In Colorado, we'll look at Colorado too. What was New Hampshire in 2016? Oops, that didn't work. 2016 election, New Hampshire. Ooh, what happened here? Why is that off? That's weird. So odd. I just noticed something. Hang on a second. I gotta. That was very odd. Let me do something real quick here. All right. So first of all, just to show you what the election was in New Hampshire, I want this one. That was very close in 2016. Hang on one second here. I just have to check something real quick. Let me just check something real quick here. Very odd. There was an odd thing I just noticed. Huh. So strange. I'll have to keep that in mind. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that's another state that was super close. I mean, Hillary Clinton only won that by like 3,000 votes. So you might think, oh, President Trump maybe has a chance of picking that up because it was so close in 2016. What are the current polling numbers in New Hampshire? No, we want to go down here. Here we go. Polling data. See, this is another state where there's been very little polling. Look at this. There's been only one poll in the last month in New Hampshire from New York Times, Siena, and it's only Biden plus 3, and the margin of error is 5.5. So a statistical tie, pretty much a tie. And that's the only poll in New Hampshire since August. You know, in August there was one poll that had Biden plus 8. In July there was one that had Biden plus 13. But that's just one poll, and those are months old. So that's another state that there's just very little polling in. And you might say, well, it's a small state. Well, if it's a close election, 4 electoral votes one way or the other can make a big difference. The CRT says why? Why has there not been more polling? Why has there not been more polling in New Hampshire? And what was the other state we said there hasn't been more polling in? Hasn't been much polling in? New Hampshire and also Nevada. I don't know why there hasn't been more polling in New Hampshire and Nevada. I do not know. It's a good question. Jeff Haas says it costs money to poll states, so the pollsters are focusing elsewhere. That's interesting, the idea that there'd be limited resources. But I mean, New Hampshire was New Hampshire and Nevada were close states in 2016. So you think there'd be interest in that, what's going on there. Maybe as we get closer to the election, we'll have more polling from New Hampshire and Nevada. Vivian Yurton says, is there a poll in Texas? We'll check that too. Yes, there are polls in Texas. Now, Texas is a state that, you know, that's widely expected to go Republican. Let's do this though. In 2016, Texas result. So President Trump won Texas by 9%. In 2016. And there's been some closer polling in Texas, but some not as close. Okay, so look. Definitely you see a lot of red there. In terms of, these are the 4 September polls. They all have Trump winning, but a lot of them are very close. Also, just remember, President Trump won Texas by 9%. So this polling does not have him up as much as he was in 2016. But, you know, there's been the odd poll here and there with Biden up. These are months old, though. But lately, in terms of in August and September, there's been no poll that didn't have Trump ahead. It would certainly be a surprise if Biden were to win Texas. One of our viewers messaged me. I mentioned how this polling site, this pollster Trafalgar, they usually have polls that are more favorable to Republicans, to President Trump, than other polling outlets do. Our viewer Tracy Kickelhan said, the method of asking what do your neighbors think is a strategy that has been around for decades when there is a social desirability bias. It has been used for studies on race and so on. Trafalgar applies it to Trump polling given the stigma. So I don't really know. I'm going to see if I can find other articles about them. I'm not familiar. Tracy sent me an article, but I'm not familiar with that outlet, so I'm not going to show it on the air right now because I'm not familiar with the outlet. There's an article here. Here, look, like, for example, this is from National Review, the pollster who thinks Trump is winning in Wisconsin and Michigan. The Trafalgar group got key races right when others were wrong in 2016, 2018. Will the Republican pollster do it again in 2020? Oh, this is not, I can't read you the whole article. But so it starts off by saying in 2016, every poll of the presidential race in Michigan except one showed Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump. So on election day, Trump won Michigan. But as I mentioned, for a state like Michigan or Wisconsin, where the polls generally didn't get it right, didn't get the outcome right, in 2016, pollsters will adjust for that. They're not going to do the same kind of polling in a state that they did in 2016. They're going to make adjustments based on what the data says. You know, if it turns out that their breakdown of who they thought was voting was wrong, they'll make adjustments. So it's not you're not going to have pollsters just do the exact same thing they did in 2016. They're going to react to what the results were and try to compensate if it turned out that their data favored, that they were sampling too many of one group and not enough of another group. You know, and then on the other side, if these are the polls he's using, no wonder Trump thinks 2020 is going well. And this is probably also about Trafalgar too. Is it in here? Yeah. So, you know, I'm not going to read this whole article now. I don't really know how Trafalgar differs in their methodology from other ones. It's an interesting question. Thank you, Tracy, for writing in. And there's also all these questions. There's always these questions of like, and this is something you see people, people in the polling industry debate about. Is there's all these questions about like, do certain types of people not answer polls? It's hard to get a hold of certain types of people. Do people lie in polls? Is there some kind of systematic thing where people who favor one candidate feel like, our viewer Tracy talked about social pressure. Do people feel social pressure to say name X or name Y in a poll? Maybe they actually don't agree with their neighbors, but they don't want to say it in a poll. And is that going to favor one side or the other? Will that sway the poll one way or the other? These are all questions that pollsters, they debate this, and it's an ongoing debate. All right, so, one thing we've seen is there's no state out there so far, if I'm right, there's no state out there that President Trump did not win, that President Trump didn't win in 2016, but he's leading in the polls in 2020. Doesn't mean he couldn't pick a state up. But we just talked about Nevada and New Hampshire were both close in 2016. President Trump both lost those two states. There hasn't been much polling, though, in those two states currently. Minnesota was another close state, but he has a significant deficit in the polls. President Trump lost to Minnesota in 2016, but he does have a significant, that's been polled more, and he is at a significant deficit in those polls. Doesn't mean he won't win, but, But if anybody thinks of another state that I'm missing, that President Trump would be a good candidate for a President Trump gain compared to 2016, let me know. If President Trump doesn't win any new states, then he has to defend all the states he won, or most of them. And then, this is the 2016 map here from 270 to win. And if there's no new red states here, then President Trump has to defend states. And we've had viewers write in and say, hey, if you give one of our viewers said, if you give Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan to Biden, that's enough to put him over the top. If you give Florida, if literally all that changes is Florida, that would take Biden to 261. And then he would just have to win one other state that President Trump won, like Wisconsin or Michigan or Pennsylvania, Paper City Gamer Jeff says, good maps to use. We need to do this next weekend after the debate. First of all, thank you, Paper City Gamer Jeff. I appreciate your support. Thank you very much. Second of all, again, just to talk about the maps, this is the 270 to win interactive presidential election map. It's great. You can actually start. I've been starting with 2016, but you can get like what polls are saying about 2020, and you can actually change the states. You can say, hey, what if Pennsylvania goes Democrat? What if Ohio goes Democrat? What if India? What if Illinois goes Republican? You can. What if blankety blank is a toss-up? You can change it how you want. So that's good. Something Paper City Gamer Jeff brought up the debate. I actually think the debate is not getting enough attention. I think the debate could be very important. Very important. I don't think it's getting enough attention in terms of its importance. Because if you're watching this broadcast, you probably keep up with politics more than the average person does. A lot of people do not follow the political news in and out daily all the time. A lot of people are, either they're not that interested or they're very busy or whatever. But I think a lot of people, like an enormous number of people, are going to be watching that debate, including people who, don't really keep up with the day-to-day politics stuff. So I actually think that debate is the first. Well, there's going to be 3 debates, but remember, people are voting early a lot and voting by mail. So if the first debate has a significant effect, that can be felt, for example, in the mail-in and early voting. But the debate dates, you can see here, September 29th, October 15th, and October 22nd, with the vice presidential debate October 7th. So it's after this debate next Tuesday, there's not another debate for 16 more days until October 15th. So I actually think this is enormously important, the debate on Tuesday. I think it's very, I don't think you're really here. I mean, I don't think in the analysis, if you watch TV, you're hearing about it as much. And in what I read, you're not hearing about it as much as the importance is. I think it's enormously important. Our viewer Fashion7T Have says it's not really publicized. Yeah, I really haven't heard much discussion of it lately. For given how important it is. Lab Golden says, I don't believe there will be that debate. Oh, I think they'll have the debate. Rita's Real says, CNN is going to let people stream it for free, not cable only. Yeah, the more people watching it, the better. CRT says, I agree. Yeah, DVD Reacts. We're going to look at some Senate races shortly. Lady Chauncey says, people in predominantly blue states are terrified to show support for Trump. Well, look, you could have that going on in both states. You could have red areas where people they don't want to show support for Biden. Is there more of that in one type of area than the other? That's the kind of stuff that pollsters try to figure out. Laura Chase says, I can't wait for the debates. Okay, so let's talk about some more states. Let's talk about a few more states. I want to talk about, Iowa's an interesting state. There's been some talk about Iowa recently because some of the polls have been pretty close in Iowa recently. So Iowa is a state that President Trump won in 2016. He won by 10 points in Iowa in 2016. 9.4%. That's from 2016. So what is the Iowa right now? So yeah, this is super interesting. You know, again, President Trump won Iowa by 9.4 points in 2016. Now look at these three recent polls: Monmouth, Trump +3, New York Times, Siena, Biden +3, Des Moines Register tie. And then if you go back to July, there's this one poll: Monmouth, Trump +2, Des Moines Register, Trump +1. That's even getting back into July and June. So that's pretty close. That's way closer than, you know, again, President Trump won Iowa by 9.4%. So the polls could be off, but that is certainly, you know, a state to keep watching with the polls and see if that polling continues to be that close there. And that was a state President Trump won in 2016. And North Carolina is another one. What do I have to do here? This is not going to work. Is it an underscore? I forget how they do it. North Carolina. Hey, oops, I forgot a bracket here. 2016. It's pretty close in 2016. North Carolina. President Trump won by 3.6%. That's closer than I thought it was in 2016. What is that right now? So this is really close. This state is real. The polling in this state is really close. I mean, look at this. It doesn't get much closer than this polling. Look at the last, you know, Biden +2, Trump +1, Biden +1, tie, Biden +1, Biden +3, tie. Biden +3, Trump +2, Trump +2. This is a lot of polling in North Carolina. Look at this. This is all September. Jeff Haas says, I think Trump will win in Iowa. I don't see him losing a 10-point lead. That's really close, though. Lynn Downey says, think Iowa is pretty close. It could go either way. And this is North Carolina. So, you know, North Carolina and Iowa are two states that President Trump won and weren't super close. I mean, Iowa was 9.4%, and then North Carolina was like 3.5% in 2016. So if Biden were to somehow win in either North Carolina or Iowa, that would allow him to lose one of these other battleground states, you know. So, but it's, you know, we'll have to see. Like all these states, we'll have to see what happens. But there's a lot of states in play. I mean, we've been talking about these different states, and a lot of them are the polling is quite close. Hey, thanks, Lee Huskies. Thank you, Lee Huskies. Ben Black says, I think thanks for your support, Lee Huskies. Thank you. Ben Black says, I think the determining factor will obviously be who actually votes. The turnout this year will be massively overwhelming compared to 2016. You got to remember people mailing in millions more this year. Yeah, I am interested in seeing, you know, I think a lot more people are thinking about mail-in voting than did before, and mail-in voting starts way in before, and early voting maybe too, and those start early. So, and I just think generally there's a huge interest in this election. So Who knows how that's going to, like I said, with the big question when you're polling is you're trying to figure out when you're polling, you sample, say, 500 people. You want the breakdown of the people you sample to be like the breakdown of the general electorate of who's actually going to vote. So if 37% of the voters are, Republican, you want to have 37% of your sample be Republican. But you don't know what the actual turnout's going to be like in terms of people from different demographic groups. Then there's this, so the pollsters are just doing their best to figure out, to predict how the electorate's going to break down. But it's such a, it's a unique situation this year with the pandemic. And also it's so many people are going to be following this election. So maybe that will just cause the breakdown of who votes to be different than the pollsters generally think it's going to be. Yeah, CRT says people are already voting. Hey, thanks, by the way, to Angie Ghosty Girl, Sylvia Reedfield Sluter, Timothy Cornegay, and Twister for the Super Hearts. Thank you. We haven't even gotten to the Senate yet. That's super interesting. I want to talk about that. Thanks also to our viewers. I think it's either Denise or Ann for the stars in Facebook. Deborah Kelly, Gina Steffen, Brian Wingett, Brett Lowings, Joel Heller, and Susan Ayers. Thanks for the Facebook stars. And thanks to our moderators, too. Hey, I just want to say a quick thanks to our mods. They are awesome. They're all volunteers. Sarah Uchikabala, Curly Q, Mark Helton, Becky Scarlett, in our YouTube chat. Daniel's Life. Thank you. Also, thanks Linda Belk for the Super Hearts and ACL 1008 for the Super Hearts, too. Thank you. Also, thank you Sharon, Craig, and Linda Belk, and Angie for moderating in our Periscope chat. Thank you. Thanks to our Twitch mods, too. I know Idaho Star's been there moderating. And Tariag, thank you. And our Facebook mods like Ann Remington, Denise Fredrickson, Kimberly Peterson, Courtney Lane, Shay Joner, Joe Serino, Dan Lindquist, Josh Tompkins. Thank you. We'll do a few more presidential states. One of our viewers asked about Arizona. Now, Arizona, I want to go here. I like the way the New York Times presents their results from 2016. Arizona. That was a 3.5-point win for President Trump in 2016. Another interesting thing is, like, Gary Johnson got 4% in Arizona. Where will his voters go? I don't know. And Jill Stein got 1.3%. There's not going to be somebody who's third party that gets as many votes as Gary Johnson did. How many did he get in the whole election? How many percent did he get? I don't even remember. Is this it? Gary Johnson got 3. No, that's ballot access. We want the actual results. Where are the results? Electoral results. Gary Johnson got 3.2%. Jill Stein got 1%. There's not going to be anybody like this. I don't know how that's going to think. MS says, what about Kanye West? So good question. Now, Kanye West isn't on the ballot in many states. There's a bunch of states he's not on the ballot in. But I haven't seen polls where he's getting a huge percentage. But I don't, I'll let you know if I do. And as we get closer, that's something I'm going to be looking at. The polls here, when I look up like Real Clear Politics, a lot of these polls don't have, they just have Trump and Biden. I mean, maybe you can find versions of these polls with Kanye West in there. I don't know. I don't know the exact states where he's on the ballot as well. All right. Anyways, Arizona was President Trump won that by 3.5%. That is a state that it's been close in recent polls. Arizona. Here you go. So check this out. This is another close state, Arizona. Of the most recent two polls, Trump +1, Biden +6. You know, if you have a +1 poll, it's basically a tie at this point. Reuters, 9/11 to 9/17, Biden +1. This was a Biden +9, and then Biden +2, Biden +2, Biden +3. So actually, Arizona has been sampled a lot. Now, you can see there's a couple polls here. OH Predictive Insights, Biden +10. There's a Biden +9. So maybe this leans a bit towards Biden at this point, but you know, the polling is pretty close. Two of the most recent polls are 1%. So yeah, another state where the polling is close. Now, I don't think, this is not one of those, it's not, I don't think it's a state that Biden is necessarily counting on as like his best chance to pick up a state, but they would certainly be happy if they did. But as you can see, there's a bunch of states where if you look at the polling data, it's not showing a strong preference either way. Any other ones we want to talk about here? Georgia's a state which there's been some close polling there. Yeah, I live in Georgia right now. If Biden were to somehow win Georgia, then I'm sure he'd win the election. Georgia's going to be tough for Biden to win, but there has been some close polling there. If you look at Georgia in 2016, President Trump won it by 5%. It's closer than I thought. 5% in 2016. And the current polling there, it's pretty close. It's just, it would still be, to me, surprising if Biden actually pulled out Georgia. But look at the last three polls in Georgia. There's been three polls in September. There's not that much polling as in some other states. Trump +2, tie. Now back here to Trump +7, in the middle of August, in sort of late August. But the last three of Trump +2, tie. Any of the presidential ones we wanted to talk about? Oh, and Ohio's another one. Ohio's kind of similar to Georgia in a way, where the conventional wisdom is going to be like, well, Trump's going to win Ohio. But the polls have been surprisingly close recently in Ohio. So if we look at this one, Ohio, President Trump won Ohio by 8 points. Large amount in 2016. He won by 8 points in Ohio. What is it right now in terms of the polling? Yeah, so there's been three polls here from, this is Ohio, three polls in September. Fox had Biden +5, Quinnipiac had him at +1, and then this one, beginning of September, Biden +4. So it's a huge deal. Like if Biden were to win Ohio, that's like a huge deal for Biden because that's a state Trump won in 2016, and in Ohio is 18 electoral votes. So it's a enormous deal if somehow Biden were going to win Ohio. It has been, the conventional wisdom is that he's more likely to win like Wisconsin or Michigan or Pennsylvania than Ohio. Also, something very interesting about Ohio, remember, is President Trump won Ohio by 8%. And some of these recent polls are, slightly favorable for Biden. Doesn't mean Biden's going to win there, but get another state. So it's not just, it's not like there's two states that are close. I mean, we've been talking about different states, and a bunch of these states are close, and, definitely you could see either person winning. There's a bunch of them out there. Yeah, we even talked about Michigan. DVD React says, look at Michigan. In very close state, Michigan in 2016, only 0.3%. President Trump won. And then recent polling, there's this Trafalgar group, which usually favors Republicans more in their polling. They were Trump +1. A bunch of other recent polling from September. These are all the September ones. Have Biden +8, +5, +6, +5, +8, +6. Some of a lead for Biden in Michigan. So, the thing is, remember, it's like most of these states we're looking at are states where Trump won them in 2016, and he's trying to defend them in 2020. So if he's going to win this election, Trump really needs to he needs to do a good job defending these states. If half of these states that we've been talking about, President Trump wins and half of them Biden wins, then Biden's going to win the election. Because we're really focusing mostly on most of the close states that we've seen. We've been looking at are states that were Trump won in 2016. E. Vallis says it's going to be a nail biter. AC says it really all comes down to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I beg to differ. Because here is the 2016 map, right? And you can see 306 Republicans, 232 Democrats. So suppose President Trump wins Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and it's still like this. Well, suppose we've seen polls with Biden leading in Arizona. Suppose that Biden picks up Arizona, right? And suppose Biden picks up, at that point he would have what? 243. If he were to win Arizona and somehow win Florida, that would give Biden enough. So there are scenarios in which Biden could win and lose Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Now, you might think, well, if Biden's losing Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, he ain't going to win in Florida, which may be true. But, it's not like these are the only three states in play here. FFC thinks no way Trump loses Florida. Kenneth Colton thinks Trump will lose Florida. Florida's huge. All right, so, I'm muting somebody. Well, I didn't mean to block them. I wanted to mute them. Now I'm confused. No, I muted them. I did not block them. I muted them. Okay. Rooftop Korean says Florida could literally be it. Reed Israel says Florida is always up for grabs. Please do not post things like Biden 2020 or Trump 2020 in the chat. You're not really adding to the discussion. You're just shouting out your political preference. Please do not do that in the chat. Okay, so let's talk. So we've talked about a bunch of presidential states, and again, one thing you notice to me that I notice is it's not just one state that's in question. Even now, also, how about no? There's remember also in Maine. Maine gives 2 electoral votes to the winner, and then 1 each electoral vote there's 2 districts in Maine. The state is divided up into 2 districts. So in 2016, I think this should be up here. President Trump, I think, got 1 electoral vote in Maine. Is that what happened? Yeah, 1 electoral vote in Maine. Does it have it by district here? Why doesn't it have the breakdown by district? Where are the district elections? Let's see. Why can't I find it? I literally can't find the results. Here it is. I can't find it by district. I just find statewide. Anyways, you can actually go on Real Clear Politics and see the 2 districts, though. Maine. There's District 1 and District 2. So District 1 in Maine is going to be, Biden will win District 1. You can see Biden's up by 18 points in the polls. District 2, which I believe is the one President Trump won, it's 1 electoral vote in 2016. District 2 is here. And you can see Biden has in the recent polling, there's 4 polls from September, Biden's leading. Pretty close, though, in 3 of the 4 polls. But it's 1 electoral vote. It is an electoral vote that President Trump won in 2016. Who knows? Maybe it'll be so close that 1 electoral vote either way really matters. Quinn's mom says Maine is going to ranked choice voting for president this year. Yeah, ranked choice voting is interesting. Ranked choice voting in Maine to go for presidential election. That's when you rank your candidates. So say you vote for a third party candidate first. If the candidate doesn't have a certain amount of the vote, they'll basically go to your second choice. Under the voting system, says AP, voters are allowed to rank all the candidates on the ballot. If no one wins a majority of first place votes, then there are additional tabulations aided by computers in which last place finishers are eliminated and votes reallocated based on those supporters' second place choices. The basic idea of ranked choice voting is imagine 4 or 5 candidates run. If you just go by who wins the most votes, a candidate can win the election with 27% of the vote, even if the rest of the people hate that person. So with ranked choice voting, what happens is if you vote for somebody as your first choice and then they don't do very well, if they're at 5% of the vote or something, they'll throw that. They'll then go to your second choice. So basically, you keep going. You keep eliminating candidates who don't have lots of votes until finally somebody gets 50% of the vote. There's a whole formula for how they do it. But again, the basic idea is one thing that would prevent is if there were a candidate who, say, a quarter of the people loved and 3/4 of the people hated, they could win an election if lots of candidates were running under a traditional system. Under a system in which it's ranked choice voting, they're not likely to win because a lot of people would rank that person last. It's interesting. I won't get all into it right now, but it's an interesting idea. Now, I don't know how much this will affect them for presidential election because I don't know how many people are going to not vote for Trump or Biden. Where it makes a difference is if there's a bunch of candidates and people are spreading out their votes under a number of candidates. Or also, even if it's close between two candidates, but there's a few percent of people voting for a third candidate, then as they tabulate the votes, if none of the first two has 50, they'll take the candidate with like 3 or 4%, and then they'll just look at those people's second choice. But I don't know, to make a difference, you have to have a thing where people are coming in, say, third and fourth place, and by taking those people's second or third choices, and not their first choice, it'll actually affect the outcome. But again, the best way I can, without getting really into it, because I don't want to do that right now, the best way I can describe it is imagine an election where like 5 people run, and there's a person, and the top person gets 25%. And so you can imagine them, if you only give people one choice, that person wins the election. But you can imagine somebody getting 25% of the votes, and then the rest of the people absolutely hating that person. And under ranked choice, they would not win, because you would start eliminating the candidates with the least votes, and then you'd look at those people's second choice. So that's a way to think about, and then their third choice and that kind of thing. Okay. Feel free to read more about ranked choice. Okay, we haven't even gotten to the Senate. We got to get to the Senate stuff. This has already taken longer than I thought it would. This has been helpful, though. It's been helpful for me just to go over some of the states and see where we're at. Rooftop Korean says, will the 270 to win website be showing a live electoral map with results on November 3rd? I'm guessing they'll be showing the results. I don't know if it'll be in map form. Okay, so let's talk about the Senate real quick. Okay, so regardless of who wins the presidential election, Trump or Biden, there's this question of whether the Senate will change hands between the Republicans and Democrats. And the Senate, if I can get the thing up here, Senate, here we go. They have a Senate interactive map. Look at this, Senate interactive map. This is their consensus. So the way they have this done out here is, this is 270 to win. They're looking at the different polling information. They're saying, according to their polling information, right now it's 48 to 48. 48 to 48. And then there are a number of toss-ups. Maine, North Carolina, Iowa, Montana. Now they have Colorado leaning and Arizona leaning. Those would both be pickups for the Democrats. But remember also, with the Senate, it's going to depend also on who wins the presidential election. Even if Trump wins the presidential election, it's still possible he could lose the Republicans could lose the Senate. But for that to happen, the Democrats would have to pick up a total of 4 seats, because they currently have 47. They'd have to get to 51, because if it's 50-50, the vice president breaks the tie. Also in Alabama, the Republicans are likely to pick up a seat in Alabama because Doug Jones, the Democrat, is likely to lose in Alabama. Anyways, but 4 races to look at are Maine, North Carolina, Iowa, and Montana, Senate-wise. So Susan Collins, the Republican, is the incumbent there. The recent polling has been better for Sarah Gideon, the Democrat. And it's a huge deal. I think the Senate it's so important who controls the Senate. I don't think there's been enough attention paid to the Senate elections, given how important it is. Right? If Biden wins the presidency but doesn't hold the Senate, I mean, maybe that you might say that's not going to happen. But if that were to happen, if Biden won the presidency but didn't win the Senate, that would really restrict what Biden could do as president. Similarly, if Trump wins the presidency but loses the Senate, he's going to be very restricted because he won't have either House of Congress, presumably. He's not going to win the House. It's widely thought that he won't win the House. So, it's a huge deal. And it may come down to one seat either way. Just concerned, says Collins not doing well either. So this is Maine, and some of the polling has not been very good for Susan Collins. You can see this is the September polling, +4, +5, +5, +12. History Underfoot says vote straight ticket this year. Yeah, I'll be interested to see. There's debate out there as to whether how much will people actually split their ticket in terms of, there might be, what percentage of people will just vote, the same for Senate and president? There'll be some people who vote different. Okay, so that's Susan, that's Maine, okay? Another really close race is Montana, and I think that's more favorable recently for the Republican. No, that's not Montana. That's the presidential race. See, this is a race where there has not been much polling there. There's only one September poll for president, and Trump was up by 7. But the Senate polling there has been quite close. Steve Daniels and Steve Bullock, Republican incumbent. As I said before, the Senate map is about a third of the Senate seats roughly get chosen every year because senators have 6-year terms. So every 2 years, about a third of the senators are for election. And this year it happens to be a more favorable grouping of senator elections that are for the Democrats because a bunch of Republicans have to defend their seats. So think about it. So, if a lot of Republicans are defending their seats, then that makes it harder for them to pick up seats. They can only lose seats. So it just, the way it's worked out with this third of the Senate seats that are up for this election this year, it's a favorable grouping of seats for Democrats. So anyways, this is another one of these battleground Senate races, really close. You can see there's one poll. There's one Senate poll in New York Times poll in September that has it a 1-point race. So, and it really could come down to one seat either way determining who controls the Senate. So all these seats really matter. Also, was it North Carolina? What are the 4 toss-ups they had? North Carolina, Montana, Maine, Iowa, North Carolina. Iowa was thought to be a pretty safe seat for a while for Joni Ernst, but if you look at Joni Ernst, these are the there's been 3 polls in September, and the Teresa Greenfield, the Democrat, has been ahead in all of them. That's a bit of a surprise. And then also North Carolina. That's another. Oops. That's another, one where the Republicans, the incumbent but vulnerable. And if you look down here, the Democrat Cal Cunningham has been up there's been a bunch of polling there, and you can see this is the polling in September. A lot of it's not a huge lead, but it is a lead in a lot of those polls. So, but it really could, remember, the Republicans, the Democrats have 47 seats. They're probably going to lose a seat with Doug Jones losing, the Democrat losing in Alabama, probably. That would put them at 46. So they need to pick up, 4 or 5 seats depending on who wins the presidency. So these toss-up Senate races are super important, and it could get to the point where one Senate race either way determines who controls the Senate, which is a huge deal. Arizona and Colorado are supposed to be pretty close too. Now, those are ones where the Democrats are currently leading in the polls, but they're seen as like, well, let's see, what's Colorado right now? And then, there's this other, the Colorado Senate, Cory Gardner, John Hickenlooper. Oh, is there no polling there? Is there no Colorado polling? Look at that. Polling data, none. Have they not been polling in Colorado? Colorado Senate poll. Why do they not have any polling there? I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know what to say. What is this? Colorado polls. Now this is something. What is this? This is from the Colorado Sun, Colorado Election Poll Tracker, from the Colorado Sun. What polls are these? Here we go. Okay, this is according to the Colorado Sun. They have some polling which shows the Democrat Hickenlooper ahead, but not much lately. I mean, this is the only one from after September 5th. That's probably why it's a lean Democrat on the 270 to win map. Laura Chase says Gardner not doing well here in Colorado. Now, there's a whole other question. So, right now, this was seen as one of these battleground states for the Senate, but currently the polling has been favoring the Democrat, Hickenlooper. And then Arizona is similar, where Martha McSally is a Republican senator in Arizona, but the polls have not been great for her. That's probably why it's leaning red right now, leaning blue. On 270 to win. But if we do this, McSally versus Kelly. So here's the recent polling in Arizona from the Senate. September. Kelly +1, Kelly +1. See that? That's not much. Kelly +8, Kelly +8, Kelly +4, 5, 7. And then there's a whole other question of, can the Democrats pull off an upset in, say, Georgia? Or Kansas. If we look up Georgia Senate, there's actually 2 Senate races. Georgia's interesting this year. There's this one Senate race, which is Ossoff versus Perdue. Perdue is the Republican. Perdue has been pretty close, but Perdue has been leading in the polls there. But there's a special election this year, because I think the second Georgia senator, did he either pass away or resign? Hold on. Special election. Yeah. Following Senator Johnny Isaacson resignation, Kelly Loeffler was appointed to be senator, and there will be a general election on November 3rd. Yeah, it's really interesting. So multiple Democratic and Republican, so both Senate seats are being voted on this year from Georgia. This one because the senator resigned, and that senator was Republican. And there's a number of candidates running, and they're doing like a they're doing a primary where all the candidates run. There's not just two candidates. You can see Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins are both running on the Republican side. Raphael Warnock and Matt Lieberman are both running on the Democrat side. There's other candidates too. And if no one, this vote takes place on election day. If nobody wins with if nobody gets more than 50% of the vote, then on January 5th, 2021, there is a runoff between the top two vote getters. So you could have a situation where we're not sure who's controlling the Senate until January, because maybe this will be the final seat that determines. Nobody's expected to win 50% in this initial election in November on this Senate seat. So we might have to wait until January 5th to see who that could determine the Senate if the numbers work out right. And then the polling on that is you have like three candidates with like 20%. It's not even clear that a Democrat will even be in the among the final two. See, you have Loeffler and Collins are both, is it Loeffler? Maybe it's Loeffler. Loeffler and Collins are both Republicans, and then you have two Democrats. So the top two, if nobody gets 50, and it doesn't look like anyone's going to get 50, the top two will end up in the final election in January. So a lot of Democrats are mad at Lieberman, who's the son of former Senator Joe Lieberman. They want him to get out because they say he's not going to win because he's only like polling at 11% or 10% or 7%, but he's taking votes away from the highest polling Democrat Warnock. So you can see in this latest poll, Loeffler 23, Collins 23, two Republicans, and then Warnock 23. So what's likely going to happen is nobody's going to get 50% for this Senate seat, and then the top two will go to January. And will a Democrat be among the top two? We don't know. Rita's Real says the Georgia governor went against Trump's desire and appointed Loeffler. Will be interested to see if she gets elected this time. But think about that. What happens if the Senate works out? You know, suppose if Biden wins the presidency and the Democrats have 49 Senate seats and the Republicans have 50, and then there's an election in January for this last Senate seat. The control of the Senate could come down to this one election in January. Hey, thanks, by the way, to Sarah Newhouse for your support. I appreciate it, Sarah Newhouse. Thank you. ACL says, my half-sister voted in Missouri already and did so in person. Thomasaurus says, Georgia will always vote red. So yeah, I mean, it's not just the presidency we're looking at. Also, it looks like it's going to be a close race to see who will control the Senate. So a lot of different states to keep an eye on. All right. Well, those are really the states I wanted to go over here. I think we covered most of them. Oh, Michigan and Texas. DVD React says, look at the Senate in Michigan and Texas. Sure, why not? Michigan. I don't think Texas is very close. I think Michigan is leaning James versus Peters. Gary Peters, incumbent. John James. Currently, I mean, it's not a huge margin right now. You can see Peters plus 6, Peters plus 2, Peters plus 6, Peters plus 4. This one poll from Trafalgar Group, which normally leans more Republican, had Pete James up by 1. So look, if President Trump does better than expected in Michigan, maybe Peters won't win in Michigan. Oh, South Carolina, Lindsey Graham is running. Not much polling there. The Quinnipiac poll was a tie, Graham and Harrison. I don't think this is listed as a, if you look at Senate election map, 270 to win has it as leaning Republican. How about, another place to go to is 538 forecasts, if you want to look up the forecast. 538 forecast, election forecast, 538. And where's their Senate forecast? Forecasts. Where can I find? I thought it was easier to find their forecasts. Presidential forecast. How about Senate forecast? I don't know if they have one for Senate. Forecasting each Senate seat, 538. South Carolina. They give Lindsey Graham an 82% chance of winning. They say it's likely Republican. They think Lindsey Graham's going to win like by 6 or 7%. I'm guessing they also look at the presidential poll in the state too. So you can check that out as well. Rita's Real says it's leaning, but Lindsay's getting nervous. All right, so, well, anyways, and in terms of who, so there's this also, how the Senate forecast has changed. So they give, 538 gives the Democrats a 62 out of 100 chance of controlling the Senate. So it's a huge deal who controls the Senate, and it is not clear at all who's going to control the Senate. So we'll be watching that too. All right, well, I think we've covered pretty much what I wanted for right now. We kind of just did a little bit of an overview of the election polls, presidential and Senate in the closest states. And we'll do it again at some point, and we'll kind of maybe next time we'll do it, we'll be able to compare if anything has really changed in like various states. It's helpful for me to kind of go over it too, just to refresh my memory as to what's going on in various states. So I appreciate you guys joining this stream and coming by on Agenda Free TV 2 on YouTube and Agenda Free TV on the other platforms. And we'll certainly do more coverage of this. But I liked that we were able to do some coverage of it at least. And thank you guys. Some really interesting questions and comments tonight. ACL says, how long until we know the results of the presidential election? Well, you should expect it to take a while because some states won't be counting their mail-in ballots, I don't believe, until the day of the election. So, states are going to have a lot of mail-in ballots. So for some states, it could take a while to know. That's one thing. So you shouldn't, I don't know all the specifics, but don't think it's going to be election night and you're just going to hear about everything right away. Expect it to take a while because, again, so many people will be voting by mail because of the pandemic, and it can take a while to count mail-in ballots. So, and also remember, I know a lot of you are aware of this, that the people, if there's a difference in who's voting mail-in versus who's voting the day of, then that can mean that votes, if it's going to take longer in some places, I would assume, to count the mail-in ballots than the in-person ballots. So then the in-person votes. So you could, for example, and it's commonly seen that it's commonly believed that that the Democrats will tend to vote more in by mail, and Republicans will tend to vote more comparatively in person. So if there's a state where you first get the in-person results, and we've seen this when we covered elections. But if there's a state where you first get the in-person results, it might look like Trump has a bigger lead if more Republicans voted in person, right? Because you might have certain, again, one party might vote more in person, one party might vote more by mail. So you need to be mentally prepared, first of all, for some states to take a while because of all the mail-in ballots. And second of all, you need to be prepared to don't just read into the initial results because that might not be a good representation of the whole populace of the state. Oh, thank you, by the way, to Super Tom for your support. Thank you, Super Tom. And also Misha as well. Thank you, Misha. It's very kind of you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Beth says, will take longer because state's not prepared. Well, it's not just, I think states they've known in advance it's going to happen, but for a lot of states, they will never have experienced this level of mail-in voting. No, I'm not going to stream the debates. That's not, covering debates, it's weird. It's kind of hard to cover because I don't want to talk during the debates and then people get kind of crazy in the chat room, so I probably won't do debate coverage. I might say something after the debates, something like do like a post show or something, but people tend to get really crazy in the chat rooms. But anyways, hey, big thanks. So thanks to you for joining the stream. I hope you found it useful or at least enjoyable. Thanks to our moderators. Hey, the moderators are all are all volunteers. So let's give it up for the moderators. Mark Helton, Misha, Ucha Kabbalah, in our YouTube chat, Curly Q, Becky Scarlett, Sarah, our Periscope viewers, and our chatters, Periscope moderators. Sharon Craig has been there moderating. Linda Belk has been there moderating. Angie, thank you. Lightning. And thank you to our Facebook mods. Denise Fredrickson has been there. Thank you, Denise. Much appreciated. We also have mods like Ann Remington, Courtney Lane, Shay Durner, Kimberly Peterson, Denise Fredrickson, Joe Serino, Dan Lindquist, Josh Tompkins. Thank you. And our Twitch mods. I know we had Idaho Star and Tariag there. Big thanks to our moderators. Thank you. Oh, Rita's real. Thank you so much for your support. Rita's real. She liked the coverage of the actual data and info. Yeah, pretty much most of what we were doing tonight is just looking at the data. Thanks, Rita, and everybody else who donated. That's really kind of you. Much appreciated. Also, ACL 1008. Thanks to you and everybody else for the Super Hearts and Periscope. Thanks also for the Facebook stars. Brett Lowings, thank you, Brett. Kirk Lanahan. Kirk says, what date was Kamala Harris announced? What date was Kamala Harris announced for the vice presidency? Did polling decrease or increase since then? Well, generally speaking, if I'm right, it seems to me, and I'm assuming this, I don't have the exact numbers, but I believe there's more and more polling as you get closer to the date of the election. In terms of when she was announced, I can't even remember. Let's see here. On August 11th. I don't know if you're asking specifically, is there some kind of sort of noticeable bump or change in the polling since she was named? I don't know that there's been any kind of huge change. I don't know how much she's affected things, but if you just look at the presidential polling, again, Real Clear Politics is, to me, the best site for polling. Real Clear Politics polls, latest polls, and you get the presidential polls. And you can keep going back. So if you want to see like general election Trump versus Biden, you click on that, and it gives you like a running average of the various polls. Yeah, this is August 11th is right around here. It hasn't changed much the overall averages haven't changed much in the last, month and a half here. But again, great site, Real Clear Politics. And if you go to polls, it'll give you the new polls each day. Actually, you can just check it throughout the day. They'll update with the new polls. We didn't even really talk about, I don't think we even mentioned the overall national polling, just because, the way it's done in this country is the Electoral College. So you get electoral votes by winning states. So we didn't even talk about the national poll. All right, thanks. So thanks to all the mods. And hey, remember so this is if you're watching on YouTube, this is Agenda Free TV 2, not Agenda Free TV. So subscribe to Agenda Free TV 2. But also to know when we're coming on the air for Agenda Free TV or Agenda, and if you're on one of the other platforms, it's just all the same channel. But to know when we're coming on the air for news on either Agenda Free TV or Agenda Free TV 2, go to the Discord and sign up. It's free. The Discord Discord is a chat room for people who watch the channel. So they chat with them. We're not on the air. And if you sign up, you get great notifications whenever we're coming on the air. If you have the Discord app like I do, it pops up on your phone. But it's free to sign up. The link is at the bottom of the YouTube video description. And also, it's the same Discord for all my channels. Agenda Free TV 2, and the Luckner channel. So you can, and the mods can post the link to Discord as well. But that's the best way to get notifications so you don't miss a stream. Also, I do have another channel. It's possible I'll do a stream there tonight. That's called Luckner. It's where I do non-news stuff. So I might do a stream there in a little bit tonight there. So if you're interested in non-news stuff, check out Luckner on YouTube. Dog Lounge likes this background. Good, I'm glad you like it. It's a different one than the other one, just for some difference. Void Moon says Harris gave Biden a bump in donations more than in the polls. Yeah, there's going to be, Darren, there will be a vice presidential debate. I forget the date of that. October 8th or something? October 7th. All right. Yeah, Lab Golden says, remember, vote in person. Well, I'll just say vote. I encourage everybody to vote. Go vote. No matter who you're voting for, go vote. All right, thanks to all of our Periscope viewers. Appreciate you being there watching. Our Twitch viewers, too. Thanks, Guru Gahan, Maddie Mags. And Shaggy and our other viewers in Twitch. Thank you. Thanks to our Facebook viewers too. Brett Lowings. Thank you, Brett. Christian Montoya. Tammy Wofford James, Bob Meyer. Oh, some of these comments are ridiculous. Why is it? It's this crazy thing. It's still, they're still having this problem with the new Facebook. Facebook changed their system recently. Oh, I think it's fixed here. Okay. Is it? Okay. Sometimes they don't let you mod your own channel, and then you have to press refresh, and then you can mod your own channel. All right. I need to delete a comment here. Okay. And hey, thanks to our YouTube viewers. Thank you, YouTube viewers. Chloe, Rid Comics, Ben Huffstetler, Sarah Newhouse. Yeah, Chloe, I'm voting by mail because, specifically because I'm planning on working that day. So I don't want to be, I'd rather do coverage, more live coverage that day and not stand in line for a long time if it's crowded polling place. So I'm going to vote by mail. Also, there's a whole, with the pandemic thing, I'd prefer to vote by mail as well. Beth Standard, thank you. Dog Lounge. Read is real. C. Prouse. History Underfoot. Sarah Newhouse. History Underfoot. Sonia Coleman. Jennifer Ferry. Thank you. Grady Lynch. No, Dog Lounge, on Twitch there's just one agenda-free TV. So this program is on Twitch right now, but just on agenda-free TV. Louis Burmeister says, I expect recounts unless one side wins by an absolute landslide. I expect it to go to court, 2020 version of Hanging Chads. I hope it's not crazy court stuff. Okay. And thank you, Missouri Cowboy, and all our other YouTube viewers. Oh, Shaft CX, that's very kind of you, Shaft CX. Really appreciate your support. Thank you, Shaft CX. And also Charles Goki. Thank you, Charles Goki. That's very nice of you as well. Much appreciated. All right. And thanks, Lab Golden, for the thanks. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you joining for this live stream. And thanks again to the moderators. And if there's big news tonight, I'll come back on the air for news. And I may be doing a stream in a little bit on my personal channel, Lookner. So check out that channel on YouTube. All right, guys, that is it right now. Thanks so much for joining for this election polls update. I'm sure we'll do another one of these in the coming weeks. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon right here on Agenda Free TV 2 and Agenda Free TV with more live news coverage.